Okay, so we all have this general picture of Saddam Hussein's rule in Iraq, right? The wars, the oppression, it's widely known.
Yeah, definitely. It's part of recent history.
But what really underpinned his power? What was the chilling foundation of that dictatorship?
That's the key question.
Today we're doing a deep dive into maybe the darkest part, his torture chambers. It's one thing to say a leader was brutal. It's another to really look at the machinery of that brutality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And while let's say the headlines of his reign are familiar, looking closely at the torture system itself gives you this really stark, really disturbing insight into how he kept that absolute control for so long.
It wasn't just about armies and tanks then.
No, not at all. It was this deliberate, systematic campaign using pain, using terror.
So that's our focus for this deep dive. Saddam Hussein's network of torture chambers and just the sheer brutality that marked his rule from 79 to 2003. We're working from some detailed accounts here that really expose this horrific side.
And it's important to grasp who we're talking about. Saddam was a dictator. He knew his power rested on eliminating anyone he saw as a threat.
Right.
Fear wasn't just like a byproduct, it was the foundation. And torture was absolutely central to building that foundation.
So our goal today isn't just listing awful things. It's trying to understand the methods, the motivations behind them, and the impact that still felt. We want to get beyond just the headlines,
Exactly. To understand the inner workings, grim as they are.
Okay, let's unpack this. Saddam's rise to absolute power in 79. The source material suggests this wasn't overnight.
No, definitely not. It was a gradual consolidation over years leading up to that official takeover.
Right.
But even early on, the details we have point to this. Deep obsession with control. It wasn't just governing.
It was domination.
A little domination, yeah. And that showed itself immediately in getting rid of any potential rivals, any dissent. This early focus, it really set the stage for torture becoming institutionalized, a core tool.
Which leads us straight to this architecture of fear, as it's described. This network of torture chambers across Iraq. Not just a couple of secret jails, then.
Oh, far from it. It was an extensive network spread right across the country. And what's really unsettling, looking at the details, is how they hid them.
How so?
Well, they were put in, unassuming buildings, inside military bases, even, incredibly, in underground facilities beneath presidential palaces.
Beneath palaces. Wow.
Yeah. It points to this calculated, widespread effort to create hidden spaces where these horrific acts could happen systematically, out of sight.
The account names some infamous spots. Abu Ghraib is one, a name that sadly becomes notorious again later.
Tragically so.
Then there's the Radwania Palace Complex, specifically mentioning underground facilities there. That's chilling.
It is. And Al-Nasiriyah Detention Center, noted for just terrible overcrowding and brutal treatment.
These weren't just prisons for holding people, were they? The design itself was part of the terror.
No, absolutely not. The design, as the details show, was meant to break people. Soundproof walls for total isolation. Iron restraints to make victims completely helpless. The tools themselves, the instruments of torture, were chosen for maximum pain, maximum psychological damage.
This wasn't random cruelty.
No, it was planned, systematic, designed to dismantle a person.
And the methods. The account is explicit. Physical torture, like beatings with metal rods, electrocution.
Agonizing methods.
And even acid baths. It's almost unthinkable.
And it's crucial to get this. The goal wasn't just physical pain. The psychological torture was just as important, maybe more so, for the regime's aims.
Like what?
Things like threats against family members, terrifying leverage, prolonged isolation, which can just shatter your sense of reality yourself, mock executions, pure terror.
So it wasn't only about breaking the person in the cell.
Exactly. It was about terrorizing their family, their community, silencing anyone who might even think about opposing the regime.
And the source brings up another horrific layer. The systematic use of sexual violence against men and women detainees.
Yes. And in these situations, that kind of violence, it's not just physical. It's an attack on someone's core identity, their dignity.
A tool for humiliation.
Profound humiliation, yes. To strip away self-worth, to break individuals and communities through shame and fear. It's utterly depraved.
The account also mentions grotesque public displays, dismemberment, public executions. This wasn't just punishment, was it? It was theater. A horrible kind of theater.
Precisely. It was a constant, brutal warning. See what happens if you defy us.
Mm.
It was about embedding fear so deep that resistance becomes unthinkable. The most visceral, shocking displays possible.
There are some survivor accounts concluded. They really pulled this out of historical text and into real human suffering. Someone locked in a flooded cell, forced to stand for days, guards mocking them. That image.
It stays with you.
Hmm.
And the detail about prisoners being mutilated, having their ears cut off as a warning,
Just barbaric.
these aren't isolated cruelties. They show a calculated system of extreme violence meant to control absolutely. These specific personal stories, they make the scale of it, the human cost, devastatingly real.
So who ended up in these places? Who were the victims? It wasn't just high-profile enemies, was it? The net seems incredibly wide.
It was. Anyone seen as a potential threat. Political opponents, obviously the account specifically mentions Kurdish and Shia communities who suffered terribly.
Systematically targeted.
Yes, but it went much further. Intellectuals, activists, writers, journalists, academics, anyone who might question the narrative.
A dissenting voice was dangerous.
Extremely. And tragically, ordinary people too.
Yeah.
Caught up in raids, often just based on suspicion. You get this picture of a society just drenched in fear.
Yeah.
Fear of the knock on the door.
That constant threat.
Exactly. The text highlights the Anfal campaign against the Kurds in the late 80s. Mass detentions, torture, executions, whole villages wiped out. It shows the regime's willingness for massive collective punishment.
And the ones carrying this out day to day, Saddam's secret police, the Mukhabarat, what was their role exactly?
They were the engine of this fear machine. The eyes, the ears, often the hands.
Right.
Their job was identifying these so-called enemies of the state. They had vast networks of surveillance, informants everywhere.
So they'd identify people.
And then they'd apprehend them.
Yeah.
And they were directly involved in the brutal interrogations inside the torture chambers. They were the core operators of the whole system.
So digging into the motivations, why this level of extreme brutality, just crushing opposition seems... Well, this went beyond that, didn't it?
It did. Suppressing opposition, consolidating his own absolute power. Those key drivers, absolutely. The account makes that clear. But there was also this deliberate strategy. Instill widespread, paralyzing fear in everyone. The public violence, the constant threat of torture. It was all designed to create a society where dissent wasn't just risky, it was almost unthinkable.
Eradicate the very idea of resistance.
That seems to have been the goal.
Now, something else the source raises, which is deeply troubling, is international awareness. It seems these abuses weren't entirely secret.
No, the evidence was there. Reports, testimonies.
Yet, the account points out that during the Iran-Iraq War, many Western powers actually supported Iraq.
Geopolitics.
And the reaction to things like the chemical weapon attacks on the Kurds was muted, is the word used.
It forces a difficult look at historical complicity, doesn't it?
It really does. That balance between national interests and basic human rights.
Yeah, and the text suggests that muted international response basically allowed these atrocities to go on longer, unchecked. It's a stark reminder of how complex and sometimes contradictory international relations can be when facing these horrors.
Then comes 2003, the fall of the regime, and the floodgates opened, didn't they?
They did. Survivor testimonies poured out. Mass graves were discovered. The sheer scale of it became undeniable.
Horrifying confirmation.
And the account really stresses that the legacy of these torture chambers, it's not over. It deeply affects Iraq today.
Oh, so.
The trauma. For survivors, for the families of victims, it doesn't just disappear when the dictator falls. It gets woven into the collective memory, healing, reconciliation. That's a long, incredibly difficult process after such widespread systematic brutality. The psychological scars run incredibly deep.
So pulling this all together, this deep dive into the source material shows Saddam's torture chambers weren't just some grim side aspect. They were central, meticulously organized, part of a regime built entirely on fear and absolute control.
Yeah, a terrifying example of what unchecked power can lead to.
And for you, listening, hopefully, in seeking to understand this dark period, this deep dive has offered a more profound and, yes, disturbing picture of a reality we really shouldn't forget.
Definitely shouldn't forget.
It certainly has for me, and it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? What are the truly long-term effects of that kind of systematic brutality on a whole society? What are the challenges for healing, for reconciliation after that kind of mass trauma?
Huge questions.
It really makes you reflect on why vigilance against tyranny in all its forms is so crucial, and why protecting basic human rights has to be paramount. Learning, even from the darkest chapters.